Why did samurai shave their heads? Was it a look of brutal battlefield necessity, a high fashion status symbol, or a not-so-secret act of rebellion? The truth? A fascinating mix of all three. And that history gives way to a modern-day legacy. Stick around and discover how another class of legendary Japanese fighters are keeping the tradition alive today. First, let's take a step back into Japan's Heian era. Back then, for a nobleman, long, flowing, majestic locks were everything. They'd pull them up into a tight, neat top knot that kind of looked like a tea whisk. But that wasn't just for looks, it had a job to do. See this fancy hat? This is a kanmuri, a silk and lacquered cap worn by the court nobles. And how did you keep them from falling off? You literally used the top knot like a built-in anchor pin. The hair went inside the cap, securing it to the head. This hairstyle also worked well for other hat styles of the day, including the eboshi seen here. But this elegant court style was about to get a brutal battlefield makeover during the Sengoku period. Imagine charging into battle. You're wearing a massive weight of armor. It's hot, you're sweating, and the last thing you need is your helmet slipping over your eyes. This was a real life-or-death problem for early samurai. But how do you take a style designed for a nobleman's fancy hat and make it work for a helmet? The solution? They started shaving the top of their head, the Sakayaki, and taking the top knot and laying it down. With the top shaved, the helmet could now sit directly on the scalp, fitting more snugly and securely. Plus, the shaved patch had a cooling effect, letting the heat escape and keeping them cooler in the middle of the fight. What started as a practical hack soon became the look. The hairstyle, now called a Chonmage, wasn't just practical, it became a status symbol. It announced to everyone that you were part of the samurai class. In fact, under the powerful Tokugawa shogunate, it became a mandatory part of the uniform. And when the Tokugawa says mandatory, they mean mandatory. The government in the 16th and 17th centuries controlled everything, from what jobs you could have, what color you could wear, and even your hairstyle. You could be fined or even thrown in prison for not having the correct style. But how serious were they? Well, there's a story of a samurai who was going bald. Terrified of losing his status and honor, he used a pomade to stick a fake top knot on his head. It worked. Well, until the hot Japanese summer melted the wax, and his top knot fell right off in the middle of court. Could you imagine the embarrassment? So, did every samurai have to wear this style? Not exactly. Ronin, masterless samurai, weren't required to shave their head. In fact, it was used to help identify them as Ronin. Neither were samurai-class doctors or scholars who stayed off the battlefield. Eventually, the hairstyle caught on with the commoners. They often copied the style but made small changes. Longer backs, shorter top knots, or even a part that veered to the side, just to make it clear that they weren't pretending to be a noble samurai. But every fashion trend comes to an end, and for the Chonmage, the end came swiftly. Enter the Meiji Restoration. Japan was opening up to the world, and it was all about westernization. Suits replaced kimonos, and Western haircuts replaced the top knot. In 1871, the emperor issued the Danpatsuri Edict. It was a direct order to the samurai to cut your hair. The Chonmage, once the ultimate symbol of honor and power, was now seen as old-fashioned, rebellious, and even illegal. To keep your top knot was to defy the emperor and progress itself. The era of the samurai hairstyle was over. Or was it? There's still one group of people who regularly wear the Chonmage today. Sumo wrestlers. Specialized hairstylists use a sweet-smelling wax to carefully style the wrestler's hair into a familiar top knot, minus the shaved section samurai used to wear. For high-ranking wrestlers, they get to wear an even more elaborate version called an oicho. The top is splayed out to look just like a ginkgo leaf, a symbol of longevity and endurance. Fun fact, as sumo has become more international, these hairstylists have faced a new challenge. The famous Estonian wrestler, Baruto Kaito, had softer and thinner hair than the hairstylists were used to working with. his hair struggled to hold the traditional top knot style. At one point, they even tried to use a stablemate's hair dyed to match as extensions to get his hair into the proper chonmage. That's how dedicated they are to preserving this piece of history, despite the modernization of allowing foreigners in the sport. From a nobleman's hat pin, a warrior's helmet grip, to a recognizable symbol of sumo, the chonmage has an incredible journey. So I have to ask, after all that, would you ever rock the top knot? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into samurai history, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more. And if you want to keep exploring Japanese history, you can check out my other videos by clicking right here. Thanks for watching!